Okay, let's go over some do's and don'ts for batting. Let's get into some hitting stuff. We'll go over some do's, some don'ts of the stance, some do's and don'ts of the swing. We'll talk a little bit about mindset on what you ought to encourage your kids to be thinking when they step up to the plate. We'll get into some drills, talk a little bit about how to get off a quality swing. So starting with some don'ts, talk about some don'ts. Don't allow your kids to be too narrow in their stance. A lot of kids want to stand kind of close. Alternately, a lot of kids want to stand really, really wide. Don't be too wide. Don't be too narrow. Some kids really want to choke the bat really, really tight. I guess it's a feeling that it's going to help them be strong when they get their swing off. So don't let them choke the bat too tight. Don't let them just bend their knees. A lot of kids will just kind of bend their knees. Not a good position to be in if your knees are just bent and you're down a little bit lower. Don't worry about the back elbow being up. There's another way that I would rather you think about it and let them know to think about it. So don't encourage them to get the back elbow up. Not that important. Don't let them start too open. Don't let them start too closed. A lot of bad things can happen from hitters that are too closed or too open. So try to keep them a little bit more lined up towards the middle of the field, towards the pitcher. When they get into their swing, don't encourage them to squish the bug. A lot of thought from a lot of coaches around turning your back foot, spinning your back foot, really. Don't encourage them to squish the bug. That's not the way it really works. Don't let them step in to home plate. Don't allow them to step out from home plate. A lot of bad things can happen as a result of that. Don't allow them to kind of lean back, getting out of center. Okay, we don't want their weight to be back. Just the same, we don't want them to stride and then kind of crash forward. We got to do everything we can to kind of keep them centered. Don't encourage them to roll their wrists to create more bat speed. Will that result in the bat moving faster? For sure, in most cases. But will that result in more force and more power and a more consistent swing? No. So don't encourage them to use their hands and their wrists to roll the bat over. That's not what we want them to do. And as they're making their forward move towards the pitch, towards the pitcher, we don't want them dropping that back shoulder down so they land with this rear shoulder lower than the front shoulder. All right, so the idea of staying kind of level is going to be pretty consistent in a lot of things having to do with the baseball swing. So those are a lot of don'ts. Let's talk a little bit about some do's. Do encourage them in their stance to stay pretty straight, not only in terms of their setup, but in terms of where they stride. Okay, so we want everything to be straight through to the pitcher, straight through to the middle of the field. Do encourage them to stay very centered. We're not leaning back. We're not leaning or jumping forward. It's a gradual move forward where they're landing nice and soft on that front foot and they're staying very much centered. Do encourage them to keep their trail arm, forearm, mainly away from the body. So rather than thinking about the back elbow being up, we're thinking more about that forearm and the trail arm being away from the body, not too far away, just away from the body. We're trying to encourage them to keep their lead arm down. That lead elbow has got to kind of stay down. A lot of kids have a tendency to wing their lead elbow up. Try to get them to keep that lead elbow down. We're trying to encourage them to keep the barrel a little bit up, maybe not too far back, but maybe not too far up. Maybe right around hovering over their head is where we would want to be, where the knob of the bat is kind of pointing back towards the catcher. We want our feet to be about shoulder width, maybe a little narrower, maybe a little wider, but as we stride, we don't want to get too wide because then we're going to be kind of stuck in a place. We want to encourage them in the box to be at a spot where if they were to swing at a pitch that's kind of right down the middle and they were going to hit that one right back through the middle of the field, we're kind of making contact right around the front of the plate. Getting contact on the pitch down the middle out here, no good. And some kids set up way back here behind home plate, which is no good. So we want them to be in a spot where contact generally is going to be right around the front of the plate. I'll turn and face you for this one. We don't want them to have their hands outside of that lead elbow. So some kids kind of have their hands hovering over home plate, which is going to make it really tough to turn into a swing. But also hands back here is going to be a little challenging. So the hands almost lined up with the lead elbow, maybe a little bit more on the body side as opposed to on the home plate side. Uh, Holding the bat, we don't want to grip it super tight. As I said, we want to think more about fingers. They should be able to kind of roll the bat in their fingers with both hands, a little bit like this. Anything too deep where we're kind of locked in on the bat right there is going to make it tough. So we want to encourage them to be a little bit loose, holding the bat in their fingers. Striding right through towards home plate. Some kids want to step out, some kids want to kind of step in, but we're trying to think about that move being straight forward, straight through to the middle of the field. We want to start with our hands right around shoulder height. Much lower than shoulder height could be problematic. And then also higher than shoulder height could potentially be problematic. So we're trying to encourage them to have their hands right around shoulder height. Again, a little bit lower is okay, a little bit higher is okay, but we want to avoid those extremes. So rather than knees bending, sure, knees are going to bend, but we want to think about them again getting in a good athletic position where their butt kind of drops behind their heels. We don't want the butt to sit right on top of the heels. We want our butt to rock kind of behind the heels so that their groin, quads, glutes, entire core and lower back can engage when they get into their swing. So it's not a matter of hunching over, but it's just a matter of good athletic stance with the knees a little bit bent and the butt a little bit back, and the entire body posture kind of tilts over a little bit, which is allowing them a good position to work to a baseball that's in the strike zone, as opposed to knees bent. And now it seems like the swing is going to be up here, or alternately kind of goofy and down here. So it's a little bit of a butt back, knees bent, so that we can bring the barrel of the bat into the strike zone. As they're set up in their stance and as they move into their forward move, we don't really want them stretching out too much before they start pushing their hands back. Hands just kind of gently and generally around the shoulders, but the idea is that through that forward move, the hands are going to kind of stay in place in space. They're not going to push their hands back. We're kind of walking away from our hands. So we don't want to create a stretch in our body too soon, too early. We want to kind of, be in a comfortable stance with our hands a little bit deep. We want our hands and our forearm kind of hovering over top of that back foot and kind of remaining in that position as we forward move. So as we make our forward move, it kind of creates some stretch through our upper body and through that lead arm. We don't want to be pushing hands back and moving. It's going to be more of a gentle move of kind of moving forward, and we're creating stretch out of our forward move. We also want to encourage our kids at contact to kind of have a lead arm, lead hand, palm down position, and our trail arm and our trail hand kind of palm up. So if we get kids that are getting to contact and they're already rolling their wrists over where they got one palm back and one palm forward, maybe we're not creating as much force in the swing as we could. Maybe creating more bat speed again, but it's not going to result in the ball kind of getting out there like we would want. So at contact, we're really trying to encourage lead hand, palm down, trail hand, palm up.